classifications of contract according to perfection or formation. Now, there are three different kinds of contract as to perfection or formation. First is we have a consensual contract. Second is a real contract. And then third is a formal or solemn contract. Now, consensual contract, these are contracts which are perfected by mere consent of the parties. Okay. What do you mean by mere consent of the parties? In other words, all you need is the agreement of both parties. If both parties agreed, then the contract has already reached the perfection stage. That is a consensual contract. Now, do you need a written agreement? The law says no need for a written agreement because what is necessary here is the agreement of parties. Like for example, in a contract of sale, Juan says, I am going to sell my ball pen for 10 pesos. Okay. And then Maria says, I will buy your ball pen for 10 pesos. Now, there is no written contract in that case, but there is an agreement of the parties that Maria is going to buy the pen for 10 pesos. Okay? So, since there is already an agreement of the parties, then the contract has already reached the perfection stage. So what is the effect? If the contract has already reached the perfection stage, the parties or either party can now demand performance against the other of his or her obligation. Insofar as Maria is concerned, Maria can now demand the delivery of the ball pen. While insofar as Juan is concerned, Juan can now demand the payment of the price as agreed by Maria. So that is a consensual contract. All you need is the agreement of the parties. Once the party agree, then the contract is now perfected. Second kind of contract as to perfection or formation is the real contract. What do you mean by real contract? These are contracts which are perfected by delivery of the object. Here, you need to deliver first the object before the contract is perfected. Prior to delivery, the contract still is in its preparation stage. Okay? It has not yet reached the perfection stage. Ma-perfect lang ang contract once the object of the contract is already delivered to the parties. Prior to delivery, wala pa'y perfection. Now, what is the effect if wala pa'y perfection? Here, the parties cannot demand performance of the obligation because preparation stage pa man siya. Example of these kinds of contract are a contract of pledge. What do you mean by pledge? Like for example, magprenda ka, madto ka sa pawn shop. Bisan pa man, there is an agreement of the parties. Like for example, mingon ka, oy pawn shop, ako iprenda akong jewelry for 10,000 pesos. Mingon si pawn shop, akong dawaton ang imong pagprenda sa jewelry. And yet, wala pa nimo gi-deliver ang jewelry. Now, is the contract perfected? The law says that since it is a real contract, there is no contract perfected yet. Because it is required that you must deliver first the object of the contract. Kinahanglan, dadto nimo ang imong jewelry ngadto sa pawn shop before ma-perfect ang contract. Prior to the delivery of the jewelry, there is no contract yet that is perfected. Only in preparation stage pa ang contract if wala pa na-deliver. Another example of real contracts are contract of depositum and contract of commodatum. Like for example, manghulam ka og item. Mo-effect lang na or ma-perfect lang ang contract once ang item nga imong gihulaman will be delivered to you. But prior nga gideliver sa imo ang item nga imong gihulaman, the contract still is in its preparation stage. And then last kind of contract according to perfection and formation is the formal or solemn contracts. Okay. Now, formal and solemn contracts, these are kinds of contracts that has special formalities that is required by law. Okay? Kinahanglan mo comply sa formalities required by law. What do you mean by formalities? Meaning, na siya requirements before siya makaingon or before ta makaingon nga perfected na ang contract. Example of this contract is a contract for donation of real properties. Kaning real properties, of course, we are referring to immovables like lands. Okay? These are real properties. Donation of real properties. Since donation of real properties is a formal or solemn contract, the contract will only be perfected if you are going to comply with the requirements stated by law. And someday, requirements under the donation of real properties. Now, the law says that if you are going to donate real properties, it is necessary that it must be contained in a public instrument and accepted by the donee. So that is the formalities, or that is the requirement that the law says in order for the perfection of a contract of donation of real properties be effected. So, since it is a formal contract, even if the parties have already agreed that one will donate real property to the other, if the parties has not yet made a written instrument or a legal instrument, when you say legal or public instrument, it means that the agreement must be in writing and then it must be notarized by the notary public. So since formal or solemn contract man siya, kung wala pa na in writing or wala siya na contain in a notarized document, it means that the contract is not yet perfected. So can the other party demand for the delivery of the real properties? Not yet, because the contract is not yet perfected, it being a formal or solemn contract. So kano siya ma-perfect? Only when the parties have complied with the requirement. Unsa ang requirement? That the donation must be in writing and it must be in a notarized document. Kung wala nag-perform, no contract is perfected. And of course, it cannot be consummated kung wala na-perform. So again, bisan pa man na i-promise sa inyo, sa inyong parents, nga langga, i-donate na ako ni ang akong yuta para sa imo. Kung wala na siya gisuwat, wala na siya gisuwat, and then dili notarize, or gisuwat manggaling but dili notarize, the donation is not valid because donation of real properties is a formal or solemn contract. Okay? So, again, if we're going to distinguish these three different kinds of contracts, in consensual contract, the contract is perfected upon agreement of the parties, even if there is no written instrument or written agreement of the parties. Real contract. The contract is perfected only when there is delivery of the object of the contract. No delivery, no perfection. Formal or solemn contract. The contract is only perfected upon observance or compliance of the formalities or requirements as stated by law. Before compliance, before submission of the formalities, no contract is yet perfected. So those are the three kinds of classifications of contract according to perfection or formation. Then another classification of contract is according to cause. Okay, diba? We have already discussed the three essential requisites of a contract. You have the consent, object, and cause or consideration. Meaning, this is the reason why the contract is created. Cause. So we have to classify now these three different kinds of contract according to cause, according to reason why the contract is created. First kind of contract is the onerous contract. Here, there is an interchange of equivalent valuable consideration. Okay? Cause. The reason why the contract is created. If it is an onerous contract, it means that there is an exchange of either items or in equivalent valuable consideration. Meaning, one party will lose something, but he will also gain something. The other party will also lose something, but he will also gain something. So that is an onerous contract. Example of this kind of contract is a contract of sale. In a contract of sale, the buyer loses his money but gained the item purchased, while the seller loses the item sold but gained the money as given to him by the buyer. So there is an exchange of equivalent valuable considerations. So this kind of contract is called again as onerous contract. Now, second is the gratuitous contract. What do you mean by gratuitous contract? The law says that here, one party receives no equivalent prestation or no equivalent consideration. So, here, in onerous contract, there is an exchange of valuable consideration. But in gratuitous contract, there is no exchange of valuable consideration. One loses something but do not gain anything. So, sa may example, ani, nawadaan ka, wala kay nakuha. Okay? Example, ani, is kanang hatag or what we call as a contract of donation. The donor loses something and does not get anything in return. Walay exchange of valuable consideration. So, that is what is known as gratuitous contract. Given freely out of gratuity. Okay? That's why it's termed as gratuitous contract. And then the third kind of contract according to cause is remunerative contract, or one prestation is given for a benefit or service that had been rendered previously. Sa donation or sa gratuitous contract, one party loses something but do not receive anything. Sa onerous, one party loses something but receive another thing as exchange of the thing that has been lost. Pag abot nimo sa remunerative, here the party loses something by reason, okay? By reason of the service that he has received prior to the contract. Okay? So like for example, I will give 1,000 pesos to my friend because my friend rendered me services last week. Okay? So he loses something, but the reason why he loses something because somebody or the other party has performed services to him. Okay? So the thing or the prestation is given to the other party because the giver has received a service from that other party. So that is a remunerative contract. Okay? And then another classification is according to importance, or the kinds of contracts according to importance. So there are also three kinds of contract according to importance. We have the principal contract, the accessory contract, and the preparatory contract. When we say principal contract, this refers to contracts which can stand on their own. Their existence is not dependent upon any other contract. That's why it's called as a principal contract. Like for example, in a contract of sale. A contract of sale is a principal contract. The existence of the contract of sale is not dependent upon the existence of other contract. Okay? What is important in a contract of sale is, it being a consensual contract also, is the agreement of the parties. If parties agree, then the contract is created. If not, no contract will be created. Okay? So that's a principal contract. Its existence is not dependent with other contract, and the contract may stand alone. Second kind of contract according to importance are what is known as accessory contracts. In accessory contract, its existence is dependent upon the existence of the principal contract. Here, the accessory contract cannot stand on its own. Its existence is merely dependent of another contract. Example of an accessory contract is a clause for interest. Nangutang, a contract of loan. Dayon na din siya clause or provision stating how much interest should be paid. So there is an agreement as to the loan agreement. There is also another agreement as to the interest. Can the agreement on interest exist without the loan agreement? No, it cannot. Because there will be no basis for computing the interest if there is no loan agreement. So in that case, the loan agreement is the the interest agreement is what we call as the accessory contract, while the loan agreement is what we call as the principal contract. Okay? To be specific, as an example, Juan borrowed money from Maria. Okay? So that is a loan agreement in the amount of 10,000 pesos. Now, the parties agreed that Juan will pay the 10,000 pesos with interest at the rate of 10% per month. Okay? So, now we have an agreement relating to the interest. Now, this agreement related to the interest is the accessory contract, while the agreement or the loan agreement is what we call as the principal contract. And the third kind of contract is what we call as preparatory contract. Now, when we say preparatory contract, there is still a need for the creation of another contract, which is the main contract. In preparatory contract, it means through which future transaction or contracts may be made. So it is merely in preparation of another contract, okay, which is later on may be entered by the parties. Okay? So like for example, in a contract of sale, before the parties, wala pa kwarta ang parties, but gusto na i-lock in ang agreement. So dili man pwede nga mag-enter na sila og deed of absolute sale nga walay kwarta. But di na gusto sa buyer nga mabaligya paslain. So unsa may lang buhaton? They will enter into a preparatory contract. This preparatory contract is what we call as contract to sell. Okay? Contract to sell pa lang. Nag-agree ang parties nga si seller ibaligya niya at a certain date ang specific property. And then si buyer ni agree nga iyang pagabayran at a specific date ang property nga gaibaligya ni seller. That's a contract to sell. Pag-abot din sa specific date, they will enter now the principal contract, which is the deed of absolute sale or the contract of absolute sale. In the contract of absolute sale, mauna dayon na siya ang panagbaligya sa property. Okay? So in that example, we call the contract to sell as a preparatory contract, while the deed of absolute sale or the contract of absolute sale is what we call as the principal or the main contract. So that's the third classification of contracts according to importance. Then another classification is according to participation in the preparation. Okay. Now, remember, in a contract, it has always the three essential requisites. Unsa ganitong three essential requisites? You have the consent, the object, and the cause or consideration. Okay? Always remember these three essential elements. Kung wala gani any one of these, the contract is considered as a void contract. Now, since the first element relates to consent, it means here that there must be an agreement of the parties. So kung dunay agreement of the parties, the two parties in a contract must participate in the making of the terms and conditions of the contract. Now, this is what we call as ordinary contract. Silang duha nag-participate sa paggama or pagbuhat sa terms and condition. That's ordinary contract, prepared based on the agreement of the parties. Na-proposal ang isa, napoy counter-proposal ang isa, ila na yung giagrihan nga mauni ang ilang i-include sa ilang contract. That's ordinary contract. There is another kind of contract which we call as a contract of addition. In a contract of addition, only one party will prepare the terms and condition of the contract. Ang buhaton dayon sa other party is merely to adhere to the prepared terms and conditions of the contract. So that is why it is called as contract of addition. Okay. will it not violate the essential element of consent? Nga wala man ni-participate si isa ka party sa pag-prepare sa terms and condition. The answer is no, it will not violate. Because had the other party do not agree with the terms and condition, he would not have adhered to the terms and conditions of the contract. So in a contract of adhesion, therefore, even if the preparation of the contract or the terms and condition is prepared by only one of the parties, the contract still is considered as a valid contract because the other party is given the opportunity to refuse acceptance of the terms and conditions. So again, according to preparation, there are two different kinds of contract. You have ordinary contracts and contract of adhesion. In ordinary contracts, both parties participated in the preparation of the terms and condition of the contract. Contract of adhesion, only one party prepared for the terms and condition of the contract, but the other party merely adhered. Now, in the interpretation of contract of adhesion, since the other party did not participate in the preparation of the terms and condition, when we are going to interpret these kinds of contract, it must be liberally interpreted in favor of the party who did not participate in the preparation of the contract. Okay. That's the characteristic of a contract of adhesion.